working.
Okay, we have a couple of questions for you. My style is, let it be conversational, not like a seminar.
Okay, as long as there's no tough questions.
No. They are not tough questions at all. Well, the first is Singularity Investment. Yeah, you started working with them in 2014. Yeah, so we would like to know about Singularity Investment. Just tell us about them generally.
Sure, let me back up a little bit and explain to everybody here why I'm in Nigeria. I know it's surprising, but I'm not originally from here. About 6 years ago, I was working at a hedge fund in New York, and I resigned and went traveling for a year and a half around Africa. And after that point, I was impressed by the vibrance and the people and the opportunities. But I had not yet been to Nigeria, so I actually, my impression was less than it was a year later when I actually moved here. And I came out with a private equity firm called Varad Capital, and was working with them for 3 years, covering fast-moving consumer goods and financial services. And then in the past year, I've been working for a high-net-worth individual who founded Africa's largest telecommunications infrastructure company. And he had asked me to come over and set up an investment vehicle to focus on investing both his personal money and some other high-net-worth individuals, partnered with the investors of IHS Towers, which is his company, to focus on technology, media, and telecommunications investments, primarily in Nigeria. So that's what I've been doing for the past year. Certainly the first half of that was slow as we were working out our strategy and what we were actually looking for. And now we're getting the handle of it, and we've been closing a couple deals in the past couple months.
Okay, thank you, Lexi. But I have a follow-up question. In more specific terms, the exact impact Singularity Investment has been making so far in Nigeria. Perhaps if you need to cite instances of companies, startups that you've invested in. I read on your website that you also nurture. You invest in and you also nurture. So if you could give us instances of companies that you've actually invested in, the impact you're making already.
Yeah, so look, we're not an incubator, so I don't really have the capacity to lend or the operational expertise to really lend a lot of support to the companies we're investing in. However, what we do offer is a great network of relationships with telco companies, because they are our partners in our towers and in other businesses as well. So the investments that we have to date, we have a large fiber infrastructure company that's actually rolling out pretty aggressively in Nigeria, and looking at doing some deals outside of Nigeria as well. We have a media relations company that came to us. They were actually pretty close friends. She had done a lot of work for IHS, and it was something that we could really partner with that company on. We have a technology company which is focused on ad tech and utilizes what I would say the unutilized part of your smartphone, which is your lock screen, to deliver content and advertisement. It's a very interesting project. The telcos say that the average Nigerian unlocks their phone about 100 times a day. So that's a lot of eyeballs you're getting on that content. We are now closing a deal in an e-prescription company as well. I'm sure, as you guys know, in Nigeria, everything is kind of done on scraps of paper, including prescriptions, and that means tracking data and inventory management is quite difficult. So this company is being actually pushed through the market by one of the US's major drug companies, because they find this very beneficial as well. So that's another platform we're investing in now. And we also have a new media company that was set up with the idea that I see a lot of technologies, that especially consumer-facing games and apps that don't really have the means to monetize. And so we set up a company that would already have its VAS license and a pretty standard contract with the telcos for companies that were both developing internally, so a lot of these are games, and also investing in, and we can really bring those companies to a path of monetization through the telcos.
Thank you, Lexi. I have a question I would like to ask you. It's not on my list exactly yet, but I'm interested to ask, and I'm sure a lot of people here would want to know as well on the issue of scalability. I also read on your site you are interested strictly, stated clearly, businesses that are scalable and defensible. Yes, Now, I would like to ask, what if somebody who doesn't really understand, what scalability means, what it means or what it takes to develop a defensible business model, but the person indeed has a great business idea and comes to you? How would you handle such a situation?
Well, first of all, they can't just have an idea and come to me. They need to have a business. But secondly, so scale for us is something that can really reach $100 million in revenue at some point. And the reason why that's important is I spend as much time looking at a tiny deal of $10,000 as I would as a deal of $10 million. So it takes a lot of time for me to look at an investment and analyze it, and do all of the checks on the team and legal background and all of that. For me to put that time and effort in, it needs to be something that I am going to I have an opportunity to make very strong returns off of. Now look, there's a lot of great business models out there that maybe don't. Another thing we really like are definitely B2C focused plays that reach the mass consumer, but maybe also B2B2C would fit into that space. So going back, there's a lot of great service businesses that people can do, or other small businesses that are maybe targeted at a very niche demographic, whether that's extremely high net worth individuals. But for me, I think somebody can make a lot of returns on a small business in that way, but it doesn't have the scalability that's important for me to invest.
So it's non-negotiable, of course, for the basic scalability. Okay. Yes. Our next question here is: what opportunities do you think exist for Nigeria in the global marketplace? From your observation, you've been in Nigeria since 2011.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Well, gosh, where do you start, right? Every problem we have here is an opportunity. Lack of electricity, lack of internet, expensive data, no access to a lot of local goods and services. There's opportunities galore. Probably the biggest challenge is less about opportunity and more about team and timing, I would say here. And I'll go back to timing and just to maybe contradict the last speaker a little bit. One VC manager who did a TED Talk, he talked about why the reasons that businesses succeed, not the reasons that they fail, but the reasons they succeed. And actually funding was pretty low down on his list. Timing for the business model was number one. And I think that's especially true in Nigeria when people are trying to bring things that are maybe too advanced for this market when other things are not yet built. VOD is one example that hasn't really caught on yet, and I think maybe that's an example where maybe it's the chicken before the egg. There's certainly other business models around that as well.
So
Did I answer your question? Not really.
Well, not exactly, but you answered it in a way. The key thing there that I got from what you said is every problem here is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And that could launch us into the global marketplace. Did I get you correctly?
Sure. Look, you don't even need to worry about the global marketplace yet. Just fix the existing one. There's plenty of goods and opportunities for people here.
So do your homework, focus on what is happening here, and naturally you just launch yourself into the global marketplace. So the attention should not be the global marketplace, but what's happening down here.
And understand what the people here really need. I mean, is your business model really fixing a pain point? I think for the mass consumer, that's a huge one. We have lots of pain points here.
Okay, thank you very much. I need to run faster. We have a number of other questions here. From your observation so far, do you think Nigerian banks are doing enough to support SMEs and startups? What's your own personal opinion on that?
Okay, so, I mean, look, banks are a capitalist business model as well, right? And if they're going to be lending money to small businesses, then they have to have high returns, and usually those interest rates are crippling to growing businesses. So I think that there's maybe a place outside of the banks for growing marketplace lending or microfinance platforms that can maybe understand these business models better. You know, if they're able to. Banks are sleepy institutions, and they have very legacy credit metrics that they follow. But again, going back to your question about opportunities, then that means there's an opportunity for another funding player to come in the market and meet that need as well, I think. So, no, they're not doing enough, but I'm not sure if it's their responsibility because they have shareholders and they're a capitalist institution as well.
Yeah, so they go for what serves their best interest.
Right, exactly.
Okay, thank you. How do you evaluate a possible portfolio company or a business plan? What exactly do you look out for when someone comes to you for investment?
Okay, so you mentioned earlier from my side that you looked at scalability and defensibility. Those are two major factors for me. That goes into very much my criteria. It needs to be able to be a large institution at some point, and it needs to be a company where it's really, blocking barriers to entry, even if that's massive entries to companies that have a lot more capital than they might have. And here I think you can do that because you're first on the ground. A lot of these you have to couple maybe in my space is technology, so I'll speak to that. You have to couple technology with on-the-ground sort of leverage. For example, this e-prescription company, they have to manually go to each pharmacy and get them online. These are companies that have never had to deal with any of this sort of thing before, so that's a massive one. Timing, I also mentioned. I think a lot of the business models that I see here are, I have to think really hard about whether it's the right time for these companies, whether it's too late, maybe in the case of some mass e-commerce plays, or maybe too early in the case of maybe some media distribution or other niche sort of plays. And team is a big one here. So I was actually just having a conversation with the gentleman who drove me back from the airport, and spoke a lot about how you see entrepreneurs who haven't yet worked in companies. They don't have the professional experience yet. And a lot of that is because it's hard to find a good job here. Unemployment is a big issue. But then these people are taking this lack of skills and then trying to do something that's risky to begin with. And so looking at the team that's behind it is also very important.
Okay, thank you. Are there particular sectors VCs like yourself are interested in Nigeria?
So look, we all have focus sectors, and I would say for companies looking for investment capital, be sure that you target the right investors. My sector focus is really technology, media, and telecommunications. And my size range is very broad. I mean, I've made offers on companies for a $50,000 investment. I have, north of $10 million investments in my pipeline. So I can do a wide range. I really do strongly believe that there are massive opportunities, despite this not being my sector focus now, in fast-moving consumer goods, healthcare, although some of these take a lot of capital as well.
Okay, so the key for you is technology, media, telecommunications. Okay. Lastly, what would be your advice to the average Nigerian entrepreneur? Honestly.
So don't chase the money. Although I'm up here.
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
I strongly believe that if you believe in what you're doing and your business model is good and you're able to do it lean, and I say get money from friends, family, and fools first. Do it yourself and get some traction, because first of all, I probably won't be interested in a company that doesn't have traction. Secondarily, you don't want to come to me with a company that needs a lot of capital but you haven't built yet, because that's going to take away a huge amount of your equity percentage. And that's actually not good for me or for you. So focus on growing your business. If you're able to really show that your company is working and there's lots of demand, the money will come, believe me. I mean, I can look at one company here who I've been begging to take my money and they won't take it, so.
Wow, that's a brilliant answer. That's a brilliant answer. Please, can we clap for her? That's a brilliant answer. Don't chase for money. Don't chase for money. Do your homework first. Pay your dues. So you become the toast of VCs. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the interview. But I do not know if we have to take questions from a few persons. Going.
Come on, guys.
Okay, we have someone over there.
Hi, my name is Wisdom. I'm just working there. I want to ask how much is too small and how much is too much to raise an investor?
Okay, so a couple of points on this. One is, like I said, I have to do the same amount of work on a deal, whether it's a small investment or a large investment. So generally, investors like to have something a little bit larger. One of my biggest pet peeves is our companies coming to me with too large of capital requests. It's not good for me and it's not good for you. If your company is, let's say, valued at $2 million, you think you need another $1 million, I take 50% of your company. It's that easy. And then everything you've built to that day, So it really is, it depends on where you are in your company, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi, my name is E, and my question is, there is a clear pipeline problem in the ecosystem across the country, where C-stage companies aren't getting funded, and then people like me are have money being thrown at their faces, and we have to tell people no. What are you doing so you can support people much earlier in the ecosystem so that they can get to the point where you have to beg them to take your money?
So that's a great question. And first, maybe I'll be a little critical to some of the other models that are out there. So there's lots of incubators in Lagos, for sure. And it's kind of developed this network of entrepreneurs you see going from one incubator to another. So the question there is making it too easy actually preventing them from building good businesses? Maybe. But to answer your question, what I'm doing, so I wouldn't say I'm going out there to hold anybody's hand, but what I am looking for is a good business model and a good team that I can maybe invest a small amount now that is going to be scalable, that I can put a lot more money in the future. Because then I will, it'll save me this time and effort that I'm spending on a lot of the business models if it is something that can be a lot more scalable in the future. And likewise, I like to have other companies working with me that maybe have the expertise, the sector-specific expertise. So if I can be the local partner on the ground that helps them be their eyes, and then maybe they have some sort of software coding development expertise, and they want to co-invest with me and help build that company. That is also really great. In terms of just kind of the regular groundwork stuff, I mean we certainly have experience and can help with all the regulatory aspects. We have office space that has very fast fiber internet in the middle of VI. It's not in War Hardcore, but maybe we should do something here. And certainly we open the doors for relationships that can build those companies as well. Still, you're right. There's a pipeline problem. It's probably in the entrepreneur's hands to really get their businesses to a level that most people can invest. And look, there's also not a lot of, sorry I'm dragging this out, but there's also not a lot of local investors here that are willing to extend a lot of capital. And international investors are scared of Africa, and especially scared of Nigeria. So maybe they'll come in and they'll sniff around and they'll say, yeah, interesting things are happening, and I love Nollywood. But then they don't actually want to put their money into the market here.
Okay, thank you. My question is around valuation. What do you use? Do you have a tool, or do you have some metrics? Because I've checked AngelList, I've checked Coinbase, I've not really gotten any. Do you have any metric or any tool in valuation?
So valuation for early stage businesses is tricky because a lot of times they don't really have, they don't have earnings yet. Some of them have revenue, but their revenue is growing at 5x a week, which means that last week they didn't have anything, and this week they have 5 consumers. Something where there is kind of revenue and it's a much more stable business and you can see the traction, then some sort of simple multiple of depending on the sector, 3x to 5x on revenue is great. For most of you, it's not a valuable metric to really look at. So I will be honest and I will say I kind of do it a little bit back end. I look to see how much money that company really needs and how much I can take of an equity percentage to make sure that entrepreneur and his team also continue to have a fair equity percentage, so they work hard and build the business, because that's the most important.